So we'll go ahead and get started. I think the webinar all started correctly. And so everything's being recorded today. So I can't move. I have to stay in front of here. So we'll get started. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm the National Director for the TABE test within DRC. And we'll be kind of talking about our Workforce Portal today. And the Workforce Portal is a newer add-on to TABE 13 and 14 and TABE 11 and 12. So it's applicable to both of those. And we'll go through different pieces and parts of the Workforce Portal and connecting it into reading and math scores and talk about our partnership with Metametrics as it relates to that. We'll also hopefully see the screen change to get the right screen up. Well, there's working on my screen. Maybe I'll just, okay. It should be. It was, of course, working just a minute ago. I'm going to unshare and then reshare. There we go. There we go. So we'll go through a little bit of an, kind of an update for people that are wondering about TABE 13 and 14 specifically. We'll just talk a little bit about that. But Wednesday, we have a more in-depth session related to TABE 13 and 14 and the new TABE Class E C&D forms for ESL students. And I will put these slides on the app after we're done today, so you can have that and the recording to go along with that. But just real quick on where we're at with 13 and 14, depending on what state you're in, you may already have access to 13 and 14. It did launch on January 15th for the online version. The paper and pencil version will start being available late April, May for those paper materials if you're using paper and pencil. So before the July 1st start of the program year. TABE 13 and 14 is very similar to 11 and 12 in the foundation because the standards haven't changed. So not a lot of big changes in the foundation of the test. There are some little tweaks to the objectives that get moved around. Some of the percentages change around, and we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. If you are using paper and pencil, there are an update that the answer sheets are all now going to be one universal answer sheet. So if you're going to be using paper, okay. So you won't have all those individual answer sheets anymore. Kind of the one big side effect of that is you have to have every question in the same place for every test. So if we think about those two-part questions that are used in reading, there was a few of them on level E, there was 15 of them on level A. To have a single answer sheet, you have to have all the same number of them. So I think 5 is what the magic number is, and they're all in the same place. So there might be like questions 3, 10, 12, and 15. So the real estate on an answer sheet is all the same. And that was kind of the big change from 11 and 12. There's also a change to the testing time that a student will experience the test. So the time of the test is relatively the same right now at the beginning, just like it was with 11 and 12. And if you went through 11 and 12, we reduced the times twice at the start as we can get more data. The one requirement that is federally for us is that we demonstrate that 90% of the people that are taking the test finish in the allowable time. So not a big change at the very start of the allowable time, but we are seeing some of those early programs in Arizona and Arkansas and Wisconsin, some other states that have been starting to use it a little bit. That time, the testing times are dramatically less than what they were with 11 and 12. That's primarily done through reducing the reading load. It's not reducing the number of questions, but reducing the reading load. And we have an example of that on Wednesday's session. Just shorter passages, less time spent on the reading of the question or of the passage. Most often easily identified in the reading test because that's where you see a big passage. But language and math also have, questions, and those questions are a little bit shorter. So you're taking those tests, the time spent. And roughly what I've seen in the time so far is about 30 minutes per content or section for the reading test instead of the 50 minutes that's allowed. Students are finishing in that kind of 30 to 35 minutes. There's always going to be students that take every second that they're allowed. So, you know, it's kind of where that average and more so for us, where that 90 percentile will fit in. So again, not big changes for the test itself because the standards aren't changing, but as we move into new forms, all new questions for that. What we're talking about mainly today, and we'll get around to it, a lot of programs are in the WIO area, so most are Title II, a lot of some are Title I, but corrections is sometimes part of WIO, sometimes it's funded separately. Those are different uses of TABE. We continue to see new uses, college like Hawaii Community College System, the Kentucky Community College System, others use TABE as one of the accepted placement tools of going into the 4 credit or not for credit. So if you're coming from high school to community college or 4 years, you have different placement options, and TABE is used in one of them. High school equivalency is becoming a new area for uses of TABE. And Tennessee kind of the leader in that, but Illinois and Oklahoma are doing similar programs in South Carolina, where you can use your TABE test to qualify for a section of the high school equivalency test. So if you get a certain score on the reading or the math, you don't have to take those sections of the state's approved high school equivalency test. Those are state initiatives, those are not ones that are driven by us, but they are using TABE for that front. And then there's more and more uses of TABE in career and technical areas. We have some pilots going on in Pennsylvania where high school sophomores are using TABE to qualify to get into career and tech pathways. So they are, you know, a lot of high schools offer a lot of career and tech pathways now. So a lot of people are signing up for them. They're not maybe always ready for the curriculum of that pathway. So they're using TABE to kind of measure the reading and math skills of these high school sophomores before they admit everybody into career tech and not have success in those areas. So Pennsylvania is doing some of those pilots, and Washington State has a few as well. But the bigger area is the top right corner, that workforce area, whether it's an IT or CTE program, but using TABE in a workforce area. A lot of local programs have partnerships with local employers. I know one of the customers that we have is the Nebraska State Police. They use TABE as an entrance test into the police academy. But then there's programs like many of the sheriff's departments in the counties in Florida use TABE as a hiring tool. They're not customers of DRC. They work with the local adult ed programs with community colleges in Florida to test those prospective people as well. Same thing with this, you know, Dow Chemicals in South Carolina uses TABE, Jim Beam Distilleries in Kentucky. If you go on the Jim Beam website and aren't shopping, you might find about 18 different jobs that require a TABE test. Again, Jim Beam's not a customer of DRC, but they're a partner with the local workforce programs in Kentucky to help build that talent pool up. So we see a lot more uses of that of workforce programs. And that's kind of where the focus of today's session is talking about how to connect what is needed for placement into workforce programs, also to be successful in workforce programs. So what we created was, let me just talk about, if we go through TABE, this will work with all formats of TABE. So paper and pencil, computer-based, online and offline, as long as the scores are in our portal, our testing portal. So again, the only way that they're not in our portal is if you can score your answer sheet. If you're scanning your answer sheet, they're all in the portal. If you're testing on the computer, it's all in your portal for that purpose. So what we did is we started out with a request from the U.S. Department of Labor's job corps centers across the country. They were using TABE, and they still do use TABE exclusively for all their job corps centers. But they were preparing youth into workforce programs. And so they do a lot of their curriculum development specific and contextualized to workforce programs. And they wanted us to, you know, to link TABE scores into this job readiness program that they were working on. They also had a separate initiative that they were working on with Metametrics. Is anybody familiar with Metametrics? So they're a research company based out of North Carolina, and they've created Lexiles and Quantiles. So a lot of people are familiar with Lexiles, maybe not so much as Quantiles, but Lexiles are reading measures. And the unique part about a Lexile and a Quantile is that you measure the student, but you also measure the content that they're interacting with. So the easiest example is textbooks are Lexile. Library Lexile. So in the K-12 world, you might have a fifth grader that's reading above the fifth grade level. You don't send them to the above fifth grade level in the library, but they can search for books and they know that they're reading at an 800 Lexile. They can look for books that are measured at 800 Lexile and begin to challenge themselves and grow and not be stuck with just a fifth grade level book for them. So again, Job Corps centers are usually working with older teams in those programs, and so they're connecting in the K-12 programs and into adult ed programs. But they are very connected with Lexile and Quantiles for their curriculum development and their instructional plans. So they wanted to connect everything together. They had worked with Metametrics to say, can you align the reading and math requirements of jobs on the ONET database? And so they had done that. They started to measure those reading requirements in a Lexile or Quantile format. And then they asked us if we can align TABE to Lexile and Quantile. So back in the fall of 22, you're using TABE online. You didn't see it probably, but we took out all the unscored questions of the TABE test and replaced them with the Lexile and Quantile analyzer question. So for a few months, anybody taking the TABE test was part of a research project that allowed us now to link TABE reading and math scores into Lexile and Quantile levels. So we have that connection point now for those. So what we did is we could put those all together and look at the ONET careers that Metametrics had measured at the time. And they had measured around 250 careers at the time when we started back in 2023, but now there are over 950 careers that have been measured for both reading and math, or just reading or math, depending on what the careers, and we can look at some of those examples as we go forward. But we have this connection through our workforce portal, and it's available. It is an add-on piece to TABE, so just to make aware, if you're using TABE online or scanning, you can add this to it. It is $5.25 per student per year. So you can run as many reports as you want for a student. If they've tested 3 or 4 times, you can get the new data. If they want to search all 700 careers, they can certainly do that. There's no limit to what that $5.25 has as part of the purpose. But what our goal was is to kind of have one resource for TABE information, linking the careers, but also the work of information. How many people have gone to the ONET website for any research? So there's a lot of research on there. You can do a lot of different searching, and there's some interest inventories, and that's the one piece that we don't have yet in the workforce portal, is to say, maybe what are you interested in? This workforce portal is administrator driven, not student driven. So you as a staff person, whether you're a teacher or a counselor, are going to work with a student or a workforce candidate to see what they might be interested in as we go into those different areas. But you'll be able to see the salary information across the national perspective in those resources. So as I mentioned, we work with Metametrics to set these scores up and do the alignment. So we'll have the reports that are available both in Lexile and Quantile, but also in TABE score. Most programs will use the TABE score because you're not using Lexile and Quantile too often. But again, Job Corps, all of their curriculum is aligned to Lexile and was wanted to set up that way as well. So I'm going to jump over real quick to the workforce portal and kind of go into that area. And do that real quick. And I'm going to log out of the portal that I'm already in, so I'm just going to restart here real quick. So I'm just in the TABE portal that you use again for scanning, or for TABE online, or TABE offline, and I can go in and just sign in the portal. Let me switch it over here. Thank you very much. How about we duplicate it? There we go. So now we're in the TABE portal. And again, normally you're going up to the application. And if you use TABE online, you go down to test management quite a bit. If you're scanning answer sheets, you're always going over to local scanning. So it's the same portal, but now I have the workforce portal added to the top right corner. So I can go into this workforce portal, and now it allows, again, remember, I'm going in as an administrator, so I get to select my location. I have a couple sites, so I have to search on my ONET site. One of the programs that I have is called ONET 1, and I have another one that's called ONET 2. You might have East and West if you have different programs, but I can go into that ONET number 1 site. And now we have something broken out. If you as you start to transition to TABE 13 and 14, you'll know that our testing system is going to be separated into separate administration. Your 11 and 12 will stay where it is today, and 13 and 14 will be added as a new administration. You're just going to a different section or a different door of the portal. So the benefit of that is that all your historical misspellings and everything will stay in the old side of the portal, and then you start fresh with new data. And it's also a lot less data, so the reports will run a lot quicker. So the programs that have some challenges with the turnaround time on reports, will see a big change in that. But I'm going to go into my TABE data because we don't have a lot of TABE 13 and 14 data in there yet. So I'm going to go into a TABE 11 and 12 score just as an example. So now as an administrator, I'm still in my work ONET number 1 school, so that's my location. But now I can say, do I want to look at scores based on their TABE numbers or their Lexile quantum? And again, most often we're going to pick the TABE numbers because that's what we're familiar with. And I can put a student's name in here, any student that you've had that has tested. There's also the option at the bottom of the screen to select a test session. If you had a test session that's called workforce readiness, I could go in there and find a student there. But what I'm going to do is just hit search at the bottom. And we'll pull up a list of students. I'm a very small program. I only have 14 students. So I can go ahead and I'll expand this to 25, so I'll see them all in one page. So up at the top of the screen, we have their name, we have the date that they tested. And if I scroll down, a couple of people haven't tested yet, so they're still scheduled, so there's no test date listed. But I'm going to sit down with John as my first student. And John is telling me, that he might want to go into a couple of different career areas. But one of them is to work in a utility company. His uncle works there, he has a good pension, and there's always good work happening there. So he wants to go into work for the utility company. So I can go into John's name on the left-hand side, and it will quickly do a very quick search. Up here you can see, and then it didn't, but in the blue bar, it didn't find any careers that matched John's TABE score. So immediately I can know that John has probably lower TABE scores. And we'll see that in a little bit, but it might bring up some career areas. We'll see another student that has a little bit higher. They'll bring in some areas, but we can still use the portal at the top of the screen. The first drop on menu is all 16 career clusters in the Department of Labor. So I know that working for a utility company is technically under the architecture and construction career cluster, but I could have went to any of the other ones. If I want to go to the healthcare one, if I'm going into a nursing program, I can do that. But I'm going to select architecture and construction. From there, I have all the careers that are listed under that career cluster. So again, I can start to scroll through those very quickly. And alphabetically, I get down to electrical power line install and repair. So that's the career that John wants to go into. And I can go ahead and select that career. And I'll hit the search. Let me wait for it to refresh. There we go. And as I scroll down, now I start to see some information about that career. So that career installs and repairs cables and wires in electrical power distribution systems, may erect poles or lights in heavy duty transmission towers. It's typically a high school graduate or GED graduate kind of level, education level, and that's all from the ONET website. As we scroll down, now the measurement for metametrics says at the beginning, they all want to start staring at me. But electrical power line installer, the targeted reading score is 537, the targeted math is 564. We see John's scores in purple are well away from that. So that's why it didn't come up as one that was aligned. If we're in the Title II program, that I think is almost 2 MSGs that you could gain if you kept John enrolled in your program. We'll come back to this. We'll kind of remember that 574 or 537 number as we go forward. But now I can start to say, and maybe this is a little bit easy to understand. With electrical power, we need to read a lot of different manuals. We need to do some calculations so we can understand that it needs strong reading and math. But what I like to use a little bit often is welding. If anybody wants to go into welding because they get to play with a torch, but not everybody figures out that there's a lot of math in the calculations of all the mixtures. So to see that the math score is higher in welding than you might anticipate is sometimes helpful to see that. As we scroll down on the portal, now I see the salary information again pulled right from the ONET website. We can see in the middle of the country where more power lines crisscross the country, that there's more demand for that job and where that salary information is. If we continue to keep going down, now we see some tasks on that job. Adhering to safety practices, driving vehicles equipped with tools, opening switches and grounding devices. Those tasks are also found in other programs. So here's some other sample careers that might use the same task, because John was when we sent down and said, oh, by the way, I'm afraid of height. So I don't necessarily want to be erecting tall power poles or high transmission, But maybe I want to keep my feet in the ground and go a little more just an electrician role, and I can then go through that and see, you know, the electrician has similar reading and math. My scores haven't changed in purple, but now I can see the different salary, a little bit less demand for electricians nationwide, kind of more of an average demand job, a high demand job for that. And we'll see that a little bit later when they're marked with those areas of growth in the Department of Labor. So I can print this, I can save this as a PDF and send it to John if I want. I can use those in different areas, but I have that ability to kind of go through those careers, even when somebody is a lower scoring person on the TABE score. What's important to remember is when you look at these scores, 575, 556, what Metametrics did when they measured these careers was not to look at what it took to get into this career, what it was to be successful on year one. So again, if I'm looking at maybe John wants to go into an INT program or a CTE program, I don't need to be at or above 575. I need to be close to that because that's where I'm going to be going after the training program into that career area. So, you know, yes, 493 is probably a little far away, but I want to move up a little bit and get a little bit closer, and we'll kind of remember those scores as we go forward as well. The other option that I have, so this was our kind of our low performer, but let me go back to the start here and I'll go back to our one programming. So now I'm going to work with another student. And as I go into my own number one school again and my TABE 11 and 12 scores, now I'm going to work with a student, Chastity. And Chastity is another person in our program. I'm going to have to go to page 2 because she's on the second page. But there's her name right now, and I can go and see that she tested already. So I can sit down with Chastity and say, well, what do you want to go into? You know, what are you interested in? She says, I have no idea. I don't know what I want to go into. So we can click on her name, and very quickly that search is happening, and it found 50 careers that match her TABE. So automatically I know her TABE scores are higher than John's, because John didn't find any. But as I scroll down, I can see, you know, again, I'm going to expand this out to all 50. And 50 is the cap, so just to know that, and it's just a random list of jobs, but I can go up to the top and sort them by those bright outlets that are growing nationally. So if I wanted to see them real quick, there we go. So, you know, I can say, here are the jobs that are growing nationally. Even though we're here in Texas, maybe you think you're going to move eventually, you want to see where jobs are on a national scale. So I can start to look at those, and I can start scrolling down. But then, you know, Chastity might say, well, I would like something with a little higher income. So I can go back up to the top and, you know, sort that ascending or descending. And, you know, imagine we see 115,000 for an economist. Chastity says, yeah, I want to be an economist. So what does it take for that career? So we can click on economist, and we see the same information that we saw for John, kind of that breakout. And what it takes is that, you know, now we're doing research, preparing report. Typically, I'm asking for a doctoral level career for that area to go along with that salary. And as I go down a little bit more, what we find is reading not a measured area yet for being an economist, but math certainly is. And Chastity's math scores are above that kind of cut point. So she might be somebody to kind of put into that kind of career pathway of going into a post-secondary program or graduate program to work to that advanced degree, because she does have strong math skills. And again, you'll see at the bottom where that job is growing a little bit less of a demand in that area. But then at the very bottom, we see the information about other career areas that are strong. So we start to see that connection with those financial areas, and maybe those are with Chastity and what she wants to do. So again, there's about 950 jobs that are measured in either both reading and math, or just the reading area, or just the math that we see with these economist jobs. Any questions so far? Yep. If you contact us, we can set you up with a demo. Yeah. Yep. And Chastity's here if you want to talk to her. She's down in the exhibit area. Don't tell her that she did well on the math test. We set it up. And John is our local Ohio person, so don't be offended if you're from Ohio. We have a salesperson that's a little bit lower on the. We gave them the answers and told them we have to answer this way specifically. We wanted strong ones and weak ones. So let me jump back to our presentation and get back to where we were. Oh, we did. So again, we had to pull up our way of doing things with TABE. I just had a couple of different jobs that we went into. So this was an HVAC one with 576 for reading and 558 for math. These are John's scores in here, so that's why the purples are a little bit lower. Again, where's that growth in that HVAC career? Typically in some of those areas that we might see a little bit warmer, a little bit colder. The phlebotomists in the healthcare area, that's always a big area that a lot of career tech programs have. So again, you can see where the math and the reading requirements are, but it's important to remember that this is year one. So this is a guide, it's not a cut point to get into a CPE or an IET program, but it's helpful to connect that into it. And then the solar installer program for that is another area that has some growth. And we see, again, the readings come down a little bit, the math is going up a little bit. So the different careers that maybe will help visualize for students what careers would be in their area for that. And always remember down at the bottom, and this kind of goes back to that HVAC career that you can see different careers that use similar skills. And now these are different from going to the mill worker or elevator repair that are different from the HVAC. They're kind of still on that kind of technical type of career. So it might help spur some ideas with that candidate. Again, the Workforce Portal is available as part of the TABE portal, and also in the TABE portal, you have all the reports. So again, if you're scanning, you have access to all of these reports. If you're doing online testing, the only time you don't get any of the reports is if you're hand scoring or using the scoring application. If you're doing any hand scoring or scoring, I strongly encourage you to scan your answer sheets. There's no cost to scan your answer sheets. You just have to use the compatible scanner, and they start at $200. So it's the kind of cost benefit of your time doing all the hand scoring versus the $200 per scanner that you may already have. It looks like a fax machine that you see at the doctor's office when you scan your insurance card in. But all the locator reports or the individual reports, also the on-demand extract, if you need to have the data in an Excel file, you can get that out locally, but we can also send it to you on a nightly basis. So if you're in a state that uses license for your data system, we already send your scores, so you don't need any hand entering scores. If you're here in Texas and you're used to using Teams as your data system, we're in the process of setting that up with the Texas Workforce, so that you can send the data nightly to the program. We send that data also to Essential Ed and Aztec, so you can build custom learning paths. We can also send it to programs that have their own data system. Miami-Dade Public Schools, probably one of the larger adult ed programs in the country. They have their own PeopleSoft data system. We send the data to them, and they have their own reporting system locally for that. Question? Nope. So it's the same scanner, and once we have the scanning, I'll just say the layman's word of answer in the scanning system, then you'll be able to start scanning 13 and 14 answer sheets. The answer sheets change because they become a single answer sheet, but the technology is still the same. So you don't have to do anything with your scanner or with the portal. Yeah, so the scores in gray are what Metametrics determined were targeted scores for success in that career on year one. Nothing to the certification. It's just about what, again, the certification would be getting into that career. So maybe that's a little bit lower, but they're looking at what you're going to need to do on the job in year one to be successful for that. So again, do I have to get to a 545? Maybe I'm at a 540, 535, and I'm working towards that. We're going to link this in the high school equivalency here in a minute, so kind of have that kind of overlap with that as well. For that. Couple of other things on the TABE reports real quick. If you're using TABE 11 and 12, the switch to 13 and 14 will add that far right-hand column. It's the next recommended test level. So now it'll show on the report what tests they should be taking next. So just have a key to that as you go forward. But the remaining part of the report is the same. The objective from the bottom, the second and third pages with the skills. I don't think I probably do have. The one thing that will change here, and we can kind of see it in the demonstrated skill areas, they started doing that, is the standard number for the college career readiness. So if you're linking into curriculum, you can see what skill or what standard it actually aligns to directly. So they're putting those codes on the end of the skill areas as well. So the other area to kind of connect into this is, you know, I'm trying to put all the research together for a student to fill up the visual kind of area, is to link into high school equivalency. And have the research available on our website to show TABE connecting in with the GED with the high set. And that data is applicable for 11 and 12 or 13 and 14. The scale scores for 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 are the same. So any cut points that you have that are using for NRS reporting or for other reporting will stay the same with 13 and 14. But that research showed that generally, if you have a 536 on TABE in reading, you're likely to pass the high school equivalency test at a minimum level. So for the GED, that's the 145 on that passing score. So if I get a 145 on the GED, what does that mean? You pass. That's a great accomplishment for that student. If I get a 145 on the GED, that means I'm likely around a 536 on the TABE score for that. What was that HVAC career? Do you remember? It was a 576. So 576 compared to a 536. So again, that career wasn't a high school graduate, high school equivalency. But if I minimally pass my high school equivalency, am I ready for the career that I want to go into? And now it's not that big of a jump, it's 40 points in the TABE score, but it puts me nearer to the GED college readiness scores, that second level cut score. So again, a lot of people ask why TABE seems a little bit more rigorous at the higher level than it needs to be, or than it is on the GED. But if you want a student to get to that GED college plus credit score, they're going to need to do well on a level A test. If somebody's just looking at minimally passing, that could be doing well on a level M test. But now I'm somewhere between because I need to be around that 576 for that career in HVAC that I want to go into. So now I can start linking that in and saying, yes, you know, you might take the GED practice test and it says you're going to pass at a minimum level. Is that really what we need? Maybe we'll stay in adult ed a little bit longer and be a little bit stronger on the GED so that you are better prepared to go into that career tech. Now, there might be programs that I'm not aware of them yet that will have specific cut points into CTE programs or into IET programs. But here is just a visual for the student. So 536 for reading, 537 for math on the TABE side of things. So just again, giving them the idea that maybe just barely passing the GED, while it's still a great accomplishment, is not going to help you in the area of finding the best career that you want to go into for that purpose. Yes. Yep, 537 on math is the 145 on the GED or 536 on reading. Both of those are at the start of NRS level 4. So getting into NRS level 4 on the NRS scale for reporting means that you have a likelihood of passing that high school equivalency test. If I jump over, we can do this real quick without screwing up the presentation again. I'll go back to the Workforce Portal, but now I'm going to go over to our TABE public website. And if I go down to the resources, whether I go to TABE 13, 14, or 11 and 12, TABE 13, 14 right at the top, so I'm going to use that. But the scoring best practices there. And if I scroll down, we'll make this a little bit bigger. Too big. But that 536 is the start of NRS level 4. I can get a 536 in reading on level M, level T, or level A. What's the difference? They may know. So getting a 536 on level M means I almost got every question right on a test that is not that hard. Where level D, I start to get more content above that targeted range. So a 536 is an intermediate score. And then level A, it's the minimum lowest score that you can get on a level A test because all the content is targeted above that range. So yeah, could I get it on several different forms? It means a little bit different. Now if I have a local employer that's looking at, you know, I'll use Nebraska State Police. They want an 11th grade reading level for TABE applicants. The Army, for example, if you want to, in the Army, you can go to the warrant officers program. You need to have a 10th grade reading level to go into that. So they use TABE for those testing areas. Could I have a 10th grade reading area with a couple of different levels of TABE? Yes. What skills are important? Now, grade levels are going to be a little bit of a fuzzy score. So it's open to interpretation, but maybe I show them the blueprints of each and say, here's what's targeted on level N, and you're going to get most of these skills. But on level D, I'm going to have some higher level skills that I might make valuable in this career area. So do I want a 536 on level M, or do I want a 536 on level D? Might depend on the career area that you're going into and what's required. But just know that these cut points are the same for 11 and 12, for 13 and 14. So the next area, kind of the link that all in there, as we kind of mentioned it, is grade ranges. So the grade ranges for TABE 9 and 10, going back a few years if you're a veteran of TABE, grade equivalents were used as a score, let's say 9.2. So a 9.2 in math meant what? Anybody ever have to describe what a 9.2 on a TABE test was in math? Ninth grade, second month. Quick, what were you doing in the ninth grade, the second month of school? In math. So algebra 1, a lot of people say algebra 1. Does everybody agree with that? Smarty pants in geometry over here. I took algebra 1. I also took algebra 1 in 10th grade. The teacher didn't like me in 9th grade. But my son took geometry in 9th grade because he took algebra 1 in 8th grade. In 20 years, if I ask my son, what's 9th grade math? What's his answer going to be? Geometry. Or, now I have my own experience and I have my son's experience, as a parent that I had, well, it could be algebra, it could be geometry. In 20 years, it could be something else. So, and I went to high school in Wisconsin. Anybody else in the mid 80s? So again, what my definition of algebra 1 is, maybe is a little bit different. That was the one non-political good thing about national standard, and that word that has 2 C's in it. But that would have given us the definition of what algebra 1 is, kind of as a blanket statement that we could maybe compare Wisconsin math to Texas math and different things. So we're not kind of going in that range, but unless you understood what the standards were in whatever time frame you went to school, they're always open for interpretation. So that's why we don't have grade equivalents on a TABE report anymore, because they're not a psychometrically valid score, because there's a lot of influence into those scores, and it's more perceptive. But we have some new data, and it's a derivative of our workforce portal, because we go back to our partnership with Metametrics, and Metametrics does work with 35 states across the country in K-12 world, and they're always, again, my kids went to grade school and middle school in Illinois. In Illinois, we had Lexile scores on the state report when the kids would get them back after that. And if you're a good parent, you would notice it would score with an L after for Lexile, or a score with a Q. I have 3 kids. I figured it out on the third one that we have Lexile and Quantile. But Metametrics has that data, and so they know across 35 states, which is the largest representative sample that we have on a national kind of perspective, what's the average 3rd grader in Lexile? What's the average 5th grader, 8th grader, 12th grader? So we can use that data now that we know those ranges for Lexile, and we know that the linked into TABE scores, we can have a more of an alignment to grade ranges, not grade equivalents. So if we go back to that 536 we saw in reading, it's somewhere around the 8th and 9th grade area. If we think about that in a real world area, if I gave an average high school freshman a GED test, what would you expect that would happen? That they would probably pass at a minimum level. You give that same average high schooler the same test when they're a senior, they're going to likely pass at a higher level, maybe somewhere around the 12th grade. So minimally passing the GED doesn't mean you're reading or doing math at the 12th grade level. It meant you minimally pass the requirements for that test. So again, if you have an employer and saying, I want my prospective employees to be at a 10th grade or higher on reading and math, we know that's going to be in the upper 500 range. You can go back to that chart, see what test level you get to that upper 500, and maybe look at that blueprint to say, here's the different skills that are being measured on level D. Is this what you're looking at for your staff people when they're coming in to be prospective employees? These ranges are guides. It does say it's not final because it's not pretty, multiple colors and logos. So that's still getting done. There's a couple of paragraphs that we're introducing that's getting done by our marketing team now. But these are guidelines to use as a resource, not as a platform. So do I have to be, at a 576 to be in a 11th grade area? Not necessarily, but this is a target area or a guideline based on the available data that we have with alignment to Metametrics and those career areas. You'll notice the 12 plus. And how do we have 12 plus? Well, we only have 12 grades as part of, sorry? Yeah, and AP content. So, think about, if we look at NRS level 6 or TABE level A, the majority of that content is above the 12th grade level. And that, again, when the Department of Ed came out with those national college material readiness standards, the states have their own, they're incorporating what they're doing locally, and most high schools have AP content. So that AP content linking into, if I took all the AP classes, I'm no longer that average basically senior taking a GED at the end. I'm above that, and I'm going to likely score at a higher level, maybe at the second or third level of the GED range. So again, these are guidelines to use if we're needing that with local employers. We're not reporting these into state systems of growth areas. They're just guidelines to help people that are not familiar with TABE scale scores to understand what that scale score means. Questions on these scores? It's more who you're talking with, yeah. Because again, if you're in an adult ed situation, you're using a scale score that correlates to the NRS level for measurement skill gain. But if you're working with, the new BMW plan or the new, in Texas and in Florida, there's a trucking company in Tampa that uses TABE. There's a dairy farm in Pennsylvania. It's a big dairy farm that uses TABE. Or Jim Beam is an example. What scores are they setting? They don't know what the scale score means. So in the military or the Army, it still says 11th grade. It doesn't say a scale score of, let's say 576. Now we shared this with the Army. They are using 576. They're kind of cut points for the War Office program. So those programs can set what their requirements are. These are guidelines to help them understand it a little bit more from that perspective. Other questions, comments? I think that might be my last thing. Oh, I have more research. So just a little talk about resources. We went on to the tabetest.com website. There is 1314 information there. There is new class C and D for the ESL side. The blueprint, the objective structure. The difference between our resources, but in our portal is in the portal is where all the manuals are. If you need test directions, manuals, you need to log in for that. If you're looking for teacher resources, the high school equivalency research, the grade range chart I showed, when it gets certified, it'll get put on tabetest.com and be added as a resource on there. You want to log into that. So I always encourage you to go to tabetest.com because the 13 and 14 section is being built out more with the scores and the resources and all the linking into the new information on a weekly basis, updating that. And that I think is my last slide for that. Again, the workforce portal, we're happy to, if you're interested in it, we can, set up a pilot for that or a demo of that. If you're, moving to 13 and 14, know that the scores are the same. So the workforce portal will work with both 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 from that perspective. Other questions or comments? Yeah, sure. Right. Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you're working with, if you're working with a workforce center that might be helping place people into workforce programs, they might be looking at a higher level. If you're working with an employer that is looking to hire specific people or, yeah. Yes. Yep. Right, and they finished 12th grade in the 80s like I did, but my performance today is not equivalent to what a 12th grader is today. You know, standards have changed in state. So yes, you know, just, and that's what a lot of them point in time that just by requiring a certification doesn't mean, you know, that they're currently doing that kind of work so that they remember. Maybe it's just a quick refresher, you know, to learn how to do math at a certain level, but you know, sometimes it's a retraining, and that's what they're looking at is, you know, a lot of those workforce areas will work with large employers that maybe are going through a restructuring and they have outplacement services. And so now, yes, you've been doing this job for 20 years, and now you need to kind of switch your career area and understand math a little bit differently or to go into a new possible area for them. Other comments, questions, concerns? Again, we have a couple more sessions here at COA. Tomorrow is a session about the most frequently kind of missed skill areas. We're kind of talking about this area in the report. That's tomorrow morning, and then on Wednesday we have the full TABE and TABE Class C overview for all the changes and the new updates for the tests themselves. But we certainly have the exhibit table down the exhibit area. We're happy to discuss anything more that you have. I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.